Hi, I'm Chuck Boone, professor of art, artist, resident contrarian at the College of DuPage. I currently am teaching drawing classes, 1 and 2. We'll teach some design and probably some intro to art in the spring. Been at the College of DuPage for about 33 years, which gives you a clue how long I've been doing this art thing. My work. It's really based on two simple principles, one of which is a very formal sort of centralized composition, studied, focused kind of thing. And the intent really there is to focus the viewer's attention on the imagery presented. The other underlying that is just an interest in how we see, both the bicameral structure of how we take in that information and turn it into something that relates to space and time. But also in terms of the way we construct meaning and knowledge and understanding from what we see. How we assemble images and the sequencing and prioritizing we give to it. And so the work I do often has imagery that's seemingly unrelated at the onset, but usually has some kind of relationship, results in either a reference in time or equally common, some sort of symbolic reference, looking for poetry, if you will. So that's the sort of big, complicated picture of my work over time. The project I'm working on right now, as I'm stuck in my studio, oh, pity me, I'm stuck in my studio. I'm working on a project called Redline. And it is what it sounds like. It's working from a redline map of Chicago, and in particular cropping it to the neighborhood I spent my childhood in, which is Fernwood, Roseland area. And just what came with that whole experience in the 1960s. Okay. What kind of memories come with that? And so I work from this map as a starting point, but it becomes really the underpainting, really, if you will, of larger other prints and paintings, including the one behind me that's sat in my office for a couple of years. I'm using it today as a backdrop, so you don't have to look at the clutter of my studio. As we move forward, I'm using relief printing at this point to do kind of what happens in this painting, printing over that image and recognizing that it's going to bleed through no matter what I do, no matter how I draw through it, crop through it, change things, you're going to get some semblance of that imagery, which suggests that in some way that history doesn't really go away, right? And so I'm superimposing on that the really quality things that come out of that. How do you hold on to the good that comes out of a situation that's awkward? Now, in the case of that red line in the neighborhood I grew up in, it's the neighborhood my parents grew up in as well, and the red line map really comes from their generation. But as it comes forward, you can kind of see where the red line was supposed to move, and for me that became 103rd Street, and I lived at 10320. The other side of our block, between Emerald and Halsted, was 104th and Halsted. The location of that, about the same era as this map, was the site of a very large race riot in the history of Chicago, known as the Fernwood Riots. It was really, the housing authority was about to construct some VA homes, but they were going to allow them to be integrated. And in the 1940s, that was not a really hot idea in the south side of Chicago. And so I grew up between the red line on one side of the block. The other side of the block was a vacant space that had a sort of horrible history to it. Obviously, a 7-year-old boy learning how to ride a bike in that little loop figures out pretty quickly something's not right in the world, only to be compounded by the fact that a couple of years later, housing laws and lending laws and civil rights movement changed some things. Redlining, at least in theory, disappeared, though on a practical level, I don't know that it did. But the neighborhood integrated. You know, when you're a little kid, you learn an awful lot. Turns out, little boys of all colors like to play baseball. Who knew? Right? And fear goes away pretty quickly around a baseball and a baseball bat in an alley, even when the rest of the world is falling apart in the late 60s. And so there are some really wonderful memories that come from that neighborhood, from that place, from that time, from that circumstance. Doesn't make them all good, but there's some really wonderful things. Now, how do you take that history, knowing what that history is and what it did to not just to other people, but for to your own family, to the things you missed on it, to the things you didn't get, to the complete absence of an answer for a 7-year-old as to why some kids were only allowed on that side of the street and some kids were only allowed on this side of the street, quite literally. So how do you carry that forward? How do you embrace the notion of something wonderful happening without everything being wonderful? And so that's what these works are really about, is turning something beautiful, something that had a mixed history, into using it to base something beautiful. That's kind of where the work is. Stuck in my studio, we'll show you some clips. I think we'll overlap some clips here of my working in the studio. My studio is actually a lovely space, despite the hiding it. It's a 22 by 30 building behind my home, separate from any other use. It has an office space, a storage space, a huge space, probably at least half the size of one of our art classrooms for my practicing. Unfortunately, this is COVID, and I have people who seem to think they're supposed to use this space for their artwork as well. And so there's a lot going on in terms of my teaching, my working, and their working in this space. It's not exactly attractive right now. But through the video, you'll see some of my space, some of what I've got going here. And I hope this serves you well. Questions welcome. Take care.